Hi everyone. This is going to be the first video in our YouTube series that the graduate students have to do this semester. For those of you who don't know, I'm Katie Feldman. I'm a first-year graduate student under Dr. Calloway. And so for the first topic that I'm going to be presenting on in my series, I kind of wanted to take the microbiology aspects we've been talking about, sprinkle in a little bit of that immunology aspect and how bacteria or microbes can affect host immune health, and then really bring it together on a topic that's often done through an extension lens. So how to communicate issues in the industry to producers. And so what I'm going to be looking at today is a common lameness issue in cattle, which is foot rot. So first and foremost, when you're looking at extension, you kind of want to take an issue in an industry and apply it to a way that producers understand. And the first thing is, when we have an issue, well, why is it an issue? So when you're looking at lameness, it's an issue because first, its occurrence. If you're looking at it through the feedlot lens, it's the second most occurring disease after bovine respiratory disease. And then when you're talking about economic losses, it accounts for 16% of health problems in feedlots, and this ultimately results in a $121 loss per head, which when you factor in the number of cattle that move through feedlots in the United States annually, this is going to result in millions of dollars of loss. So that's a pretty big issue from that perspective. And of course, when an animal goes lame, they're not able to access feed and water as they normally would. So we're going to see productivity issues. Some studies looking at average daily gain, feedlot steers that were afflicted with lameness gained less than steers that did not. This is also a huge issue in the dairy industry, where dairy cows that have lameness often have a mean milk production decrease of 10%. So that's pretty significant. So lameness, of course, refers to a giant umbrella of diseases that cause animals to not be able to move the way that they normally are able to. And foot rot is the ringleader of that. It accounts for the majority of lameness incidences in beef cattle and dairy cattle as well. I've seen estimates of anywhere up to 75% of all lameness cases. So pretty significant chunk. And it's also important to know when we're discussing diseases in general, it's most diseases often have multiple terms and they all mean the same thing. So when I was looking at literature, it was often referred to as interdigital phlegmon. If you ever watch the TikTok videos of the hoof trimmings and dairy cattle, and they're talking about foot abscesses, a lot of times that's caused by foot rot. So it's kind of the same thing. So getting into the pathology of foot rot, what causes it exactly? So we're looking at very dry or muddy conditions. Where I come from in the Midwest and out west, where most feedlots are, there's a lot of rainfall, and these muddy conditions create the perfect breeding ground for bacteria. And this is because as animals are going through high traffic areas, there's a lot more potential for debris, such as sharp rocks or nails that have fallen off a post or kind of hidden in that sludge. Animals step on them and they damage that skin horn junction. And once that's broken, it's easy target for bacteria to enter into that wound and start festering. And so foot rot is an infectious bacterial disease, and it can be caused by several different pathogens, but the main pathogen that most people focus on is Fusobacterium necrophorum. And kind of bringing in that immunology aspect of how that impacts the host. It does this through leukotoxins. And what these do is they attack the host defense cells and cause their death. And so then that way they're able to cause the necrosis in the hoof wall and the surrounding region. And one of the issues is that this bacteria can persist in soil and manure for up to 10 months. So the first time you have an incidence of foot rot in the herd, you really need to be diligent, because if other animals get injuries to their hoof, it's very likely that they're also going to develop foot rot. And so symptoms of foot rot, uh, the one of the key indicators is sudden onset of lameness. So an animal will be fine in the evening. When you go out to check on them in the morning, all of a sudden they're completely unable to bear weight on the afflicted hoof. You're going to notice a lot of swelling to the point that the toes will actually separate, as you can see in this picture in the right corner. It pulls those toes apart, and that swelling can even travel up to the fetlock. As foot rot progresses, we're going to see a breakdown in the hoof walls. There'll be cracks and necrotic lesions. In this diagram, you can see you have your broken skin horn junction, and then there's hard horn, which is the normal region, but then that soft horn, you're going to start seeing abnormalities, which is lifting or cracking in that sole as that necrosis sets in. And one of the big indicators, which we had a bull that had foot rot on our farm, it is a very foul odor. You will know right away whether or not you are dealing with foot rot just based on the odor alone, because of that dying tissue. And of course, if it's left untreated, this is going to develop into a deep sepsis where it will basically, the hoof wall will completely degenerate and that animal will be lame permanently. So treating foot rot, luckily, if it's caught early on, it can be treated very successfully and animals can make a full recovery. So early intervention is very important. And the way that we treat foot rot is using antibiotics. So the main class of antibiotics used is going to be tetracycline. I've seen in literature papers discuss the use of penicillin or Nuflor, which is primarily used in bovine respiratory diseases. But these kind of drugs are not as common in treating foot rot. It's going to be predominantly that tetracycline. But of course, as it is with a lot of diseases that occur in cattle, prevention is key. So making sure to scrape the high traffic areas regularly. We want to keep that manure, those muddy conditions down as much as possible, so animals are not trudging through conditions that are going to carry bacteria and that pathogen. Making sure to always keep an eye out and clear debris that can cause injury to that hoof skin junction. So things like sharp rocks, when nail posts or bits of fencing come loose, animals can step on that. So just making sure that's not in the pasture or the pen. And another important aspect is the diet. So making sure that there's adequate zinc, because zinc is really important in the integrity of the skin and the hoof. So even if there are those sharp objects, that can kind of help make sure that a puncture does not actually happen. So as you can see, foot rot, it's a very common issue in the industry. It can be treated, it can be prevented, but it's really important to know what to look for in case it happens. So I hope you found this presentation interesting. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I can definitely try my best to answer them. And of course, these are some of the papers and some of the images that I used if you have any interest and kind of reading about foot rot further. So yeah, thank you all for listening, and I'll see you all again soon. All right.